Hello everyone, this is Mark Yerkes coming to you from Syntagma Square in Athens, Greece. It's a long journey ahead, but I wanted to start off here at the Parliament building where you'll get a quick glimpse of the famous changing of the guard.
Despite what you might think, these men are highly trained and tough. Nobody can dress and walk this way and not be tough.
Now I have to say that this is not my final destination on this trip, but it's a great launching pad. There's two locations that I wanted to visit while I'm here. Both are mentioned in the Bible. The first is the Ancient Agora, where the Apostle Paul first arrived in Athens and began preaching the gospel. And the second is Areopagus Hill, the place where the city council would meet to hear whether this gospel that Paul was preaching was worthy to be preached in the streets of Athens. So stand by, we're going to have a great visit.
The ruins of the ancient Acropolis barely hint at their aesthetic beauty when the Apostle Paul arrived. Athens still clung to its reputation as a center of Greek idolatry and human philosophy, though in reality it had been long in decline, a conquered vassal of the Roman Empire. Their vain attempts to gain wisdom only led them further from the truth.
Well, here I am at the foot of the Acropolis. There's a lot of structures, abandoned buildings all around here. On the way, the path up to the top of the Acropolis. I am not built for mountain climbing. So fortunately, there's plenty of these benches all along the path, and I'm sure I'm going to be warming several of them along the way up. Hope to see you at the top.
One of the first archaeological sites you will encounter on the path to the top is the Theater of Dionysus. It is located below the southwest escarpment of the Acropolis. Dionysus was the god of wine, ecstasy, and madness. It's no wonder that theater, with its symbolic mask of comedy and tragedy, is dedicated in his honor. What we now enjoy in live theater had its origin in this Greek amphitheater some 2,600 years ago. The summit eventually appears within reach. A final push brings us to the only access to the top of the Acropolis, the columned gateway known as the Propylii.
Well, believe it or not, I made it to the top. And as you can see behind me is the temple to the goddess Athena, the Virgin, called the Parthenon, right here on top of the Acropolis. This is the highest point in the city center. And of course, it stands to reason that this would be the place where the greatest of the gods would be worshipped.
One of the more interesting temples on the site is the Erectium, with its porch of the Caryatides on one side to honor Athena, and on the other, a porch dedicated to the god of the sea, Poseidon, who supposedly struck the Acropolis with his trident. Adjoining the two porches is where Athena, in response, planted a sacred olive tree and won the devotion of the people. The Athenians keep a modern olive tree planted in the spot, perhaps because they are still, as Paul pointed out, a very superstitious people. But before we leave the Acropolis, there is one more view to share from the Propylii Gate, Areopagus Hill, and the marketplace below. As you walk through the ruins of the ancient Agora, you will find many pedestals upon which once stood either statues of dignitaries or statues of gods. Certainly when Paul said, "I can see you are a very religious people," he was referring to all of the idols along the paths. including the various altars and temples. The Temple of Hephaestus, the god of metallurgy and the forge, has a prominent position on the slope by the marketplace. It is the most well-preserved temple in Athens, and Paul could not have helped but notice it. Nor could the city elders help but notice Paul. They summoned him to explain his strange new teaching.
Well, folks, this ends my trip for the day. We are on Areopagus Hill, and as you can see over my shoulder there, that's the Acropolis. So we are at a midway point, actually, below the Acropolis and above the Agora, the Ancient Agora, the forum where the market was held and where many of the affairs of men were conducted. It's named Areopagus because it's named after the god Ares, and Pagos means big rock. And so that's what it's called. It's also known as Mars Hill because the Romans called the god Ares by the name Mars. This was a place of oversight for the rich and the powerful, the philosophers and the overseers of the city. And that is why the Apostle Paul had to come up here and give a defense of the doctrine which he was teaching, the gospel. So this is where, in the 17th chapter of Acts, he delivered that famous speech to the Athenians. So, not much remains of the place now, except for the legend and the story that lies behind it.
Of course, Paul's teachings were rejected, but his brief visit was not without fruit. Acts 27 verse 34 mentions that a few did listen to Paul and believed, including a woman named Damaris and one Dionysius the Areopagite, who later became Saint Dionysius, the first bishop of Athens. His life is celebrated every year in the Catholic and Greek Orthodox churches. Join me next time as we follow the footsteps of the Apostle Paul in Corinth.
Hey folks, can you believe it? They're turning the Parthenon into a shopping mall. Wonder where they're putting the escalators in.